This wide, green depression in the French countryside is the Lochnagar Crater. It's a massive, man-made anomaly, blasted into the earth on the morning of July 1st, 1916. To understand how it got here, we have to rewind to late 1915. The Western Front had ground to a complete halt. Near the village of Le Boissel, the fighting was so intense that troops gave the area a dark nickname, the Glory Hole. The problem was a German elevation known as the Schwabenhöhe. It sat on a rise that gave defenders a commanding view of the British lines, making a surface infantry assault completely impossible. So the British Army decided to go underneath it. They tasked the 179th and 185th tunneling companies of the Royal Engineers with digging a shaft 90 feet straight down into the earth and then driving a tunnel 300 yards across no man's land. This triggered a brutal blindfold game of cat and mouse. German listeners used seismic sensors called geophones to track digging. Make a single sound and the enemy would detonate a defensive charge to collapse your tunnel and bury you alive. The Somme sits on a massive bed of Cretaceous chalk. For a tunneler, this soil is highly stable, allowing you to dig long distances without heavy timber supports. But it contains hidden layers of hard flint nodules. Striking one of those flints with a traditional steel pickaxe would create a loud spark and a clink. Through the solid chalk, that sharp sound would ring like a bell directly into the ears of the German listeners. The engineers bypassed the flint by wetting the chalk face and employing a technique called clay kicking. A sapper lay on his back on a padded plank, using his legs to quietly drive a specialized spade into the softened earth. The physical toll was horrific. Aside from severe repetitive strain, miners worked in tight, unventilated spaces where carbon monoxide pooled. They suffered from respiratory sickness, debilitating trench foot, and constant psychological terror, listening for the pickaxes of enemy counterminers. Turning the solid ground against the German strongpoint required destroying the bodies and minds of the British tunnelers working in the dark. After months of silent excavation, the tunnelers carved out a final chamber beneath the German lines and packed it with 60,000 pounds of explosive. This diagram breaks down the specific explosive they used, known as ammonal. It contains ammonium nitrate, TNT, and a small amount of charcoal. But the crucial ingredient is powdered aluminum. When ignited, the aluminum burns at an extreme temperature, rapidly multiplying the gas volume and heat to create a massive heaving effect. The main technical hurdle is that ammonal is highly hygroscopic, meaning it rapidly absorbs moisture from the air. Left exposed in a damp, 90-foot-deep chalk tunnel, the explosive would quickly become useless. Engineers packed the mixture into sealed containers to guarantee it stayed perfectly dry. They also made a calculated mathematical decision. They intentionally overcharged the mine, using significantly more explosive than needed to destroy the bunker. The plan was to launch enough earth into the surrounding fields to form a 15-foot-high protective rim, shielding the advancing British infantry, the 34th Division, from enemy machine guns. The massive bomb was meticulously engineered to do dual duty, eliminate the German position, and throw up a wall of dirt to physically shield the volunteer PALS battalions waiting in the trenches above. At 7:28 on the morning of July 1st, 1916, the mine detonated, throwing 27 tons of earth and chalk 4,000 feet skyward. This photograph from the era shows the massive void left behind. The blast gouged out a crater over 300 feet wide, leaving the remnants of the tunnel entrances exposed in the shattered chalk. But the surface assaults failed almost instantly. For 7 days prior to the explosion, British artillery had bombarded the area. Yet, as you can see from these surviving sandbag-lined trenches, the shelling had failed to cut the barbed wire or crush the deep German dugouts. When the infantry of the 34th Division went over the top, the sky was raining massive chunks of debris from the overcharged mine. The falling earth forced the British troops to pause in no man's land. That brief delay allowed the surviving German defenders to open fire. The brilliant subterranean engineering actually compounded the disaster on the surface. For thousands cut down on the bloodiest day in British military history, The roar of the Lochnagar mine was the final sound they heard. In the decades following the war, local French farmers reclaimed the battered landscape. They filled in most of the craters along the western front to plow fields, burying rubble and unrecovered remains in the process. Lochnagar was neglected, and at one point was even used as a motocross track. It would have been completely leveled if a private citizen named Richard Dunning hadn't purchased the land in 1978 specifically to protect it. Looking at the crater today, with a simple wooden memorial standing on its edge, you are looking at an unrecovered mass grave. It is now maintained as an educational sanctuary and a site of remembrance for soldiers of all nations. The Lochnagar Crater stands frozen in time. It is a precise physical record of exactly where industrial chemistry, prehistoric geology, and human tragedy violently collided.